Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The heart has a certain pace to it, a certain rhythm to it. And the doctors call it the sinus rhythm. If your heart is out of rhythm, if the beat that goes on in your heart is out of rhythm, there's a difficulty and there's a problem. I think it's called atrial fibrillation, which means your heart is not pacing in the way it's supposed to normally pace. And our life has a rhythm to it. As we go through our existence, if we're angry, there's a certain rhythm to us. If we're joyous, there's a certain rhythm to us. If we're in love, there's a certain rhythm to us. If we have positive qualities, there's a certain rhythm to us. And if we have negative qualities, there's a certain rhythm to us. My teacher, Bawa Muhaiyaddeen, used to break out into spontaneous song. And the rhythm of that music was such that it would elevate you. You could feel the vibratory nature of that music, and it could change your vibratory nature. So we, all of us, need to understand that we have a certain rhythm. And this rhythm is either in tune or out of tune with appropriate behavior and the rhythm of creation. When I was in Medina one time, I was taken to a group of men after the morning prayer who were reciting the Quran. And it was led by two older men who were teaching people the correct inflection of the words, how to say them and how to modulate them. When the prayers are recited, there is a rhythm to them. There is a tune to them. And the tune sometimes changes from country to country, but there is a tune, there is a rhythm to all of it. And this rhythm corresponds to a rhythm within us, and we pick up that rhythm. Now, we should understand that as we go through our day and as we modulate through different feelings and different ideas, our rhythm changes. In India, there's a superstition that when somebody yawns, people either snap their fingers or clap their hands. And the reason is that a yawn interrupts the rhythm. You've all yawned, and you can see how a yawn interrupts the rhythm of your being. We are all within certain rhythms. Now, we all influence each other in our rhythms. One of the reasons that we would go so often to sit with our teacher is because the vibratory nature that he gave off, the resonance that he gave off, influenced us and changed our rhythm. We could sit in front of him and he didn't have to say anything. And there was a change that occurred, and we could feel the change. We could feel that something new was happening to us, and we were somehow altered by being in the presence of that resonance, by being in the presence of that exalted nature, by being in the presence of that elevated, transcendent resonance. It's very important who we associate with. The rhythm and the nature of the people we associate with influences us. And if we associate with people who are detrimental to our true nature, we will be harmed. We will change. In other words, if you hang out with people who have crocodile nature, you will pick up crocodile nature. If you hang out with people who have different animal natures, you will pick up that animal nature. There's the story of a lion cub who got lost, and he got lost near a farm area, and he attached himself to a shepherd who had a group of sheep and lambs with him, and he began to play with the lambs. Days went by, and he became like one of the lambs and began to act like one of the lambs, and the lambs became his playmates. His father, a grown lion, was looking for him and finally found him. And when he approached him, the baby cub said, "I'm afraid of you. This is who I belong with. Why are you here?" And the lion said, "You're not one of them. You're a lion. You're not a sheep." And the cub refused and refused to acknowledge us. Finally, the lion grabbed the cub with its mouth and drug it to a lake, where he showed him the image of himself, and he could see he was a lion. But before that, he was convinced he was a sheep. So the lion finally was able to show him who he really was. It's like that with our teacher. We take on all kinds of personas as we travel through this world. We take on all kinds of different personalities as we go through this world. And what happens is we need to be shown who we really are. We need to come into contact with who we really are. And this is one of the things that a teacher does for us. He becomes a mirror for who we really are, because we have forgotten who we really are. We have fallen asleep within our environment, and we have associated ourselves within our environment, and we have created mental images that associate with our environment, and we begin to obsessively think about that which goes on in our environment, and that takes up all of our time. Satan was worried that too many people on earth were believing in God. So he asked some of his henchmen if they could come up with some ideas as to what to tell people in order to draw them away from God. And one of them stood up and said, "Well, tell them there is no God." And Satan said, "I don't think that's going to work. There's something inherent in them that knows there is a creator, that knows there is a God. And just telling them that there is no God won't convince them. He said, is there any other suggestions? Another small devil stood up and said, tell them that there is no sin. Satan said, well, I don't think people will believe that either. They seem to know inherently that there is a correct action and an incorrect action. And they know that certain things shouldn't be done and that are never appropriate, and that there is in fact sin. So a third one stood up and said, well, why don't we just tell them there's no hurry? And Satan said, that's it. Go into the world and tell everybody there's no hurry. And so that's Satan's big push in the world now. There is a God, there is sin, but don't worry about it. There's no hurry. You can all get around to it at some time. Well, this seems to be the fate of the world. Everything can wait, especially God. And God can wait until we get everything done within the world. So many people have such incredibly busy lives and incredibly full lives that their mind is constantly in a state of worry and in a state of agitation and in a state of trying to figure out how to handle their daily existence. And the more one has in the world, the more one is involved in trying to handle all of the worldly complications. Now, the sheikh will tell you, if you're fortunate enough to have one, you have to cut your attachment to all of these things away. And you have to somehow begin the process. Well, everybody is putting the process to begin the cutting away off until tomorrow because they've got to straighten out everything in the world first. Guess what? The worldly problems can never be straightened out. And as long as that is the focus of your attention, as long as you are constantly struggling with trying to straighten out worldly problems, there is no end to them. We have to somehow cut our attachment to these problems and let go of our association with these problems. Unless we can do that, unless we can turn away and act if these problems didn't exist, or at least act to the point where they don't affect us and they don't affect our vibration, they don't affect our resonance, they don't affect who we are, they don't alter us, we are going to be caught in that dilemma. And that dilemma is not uncommon. When I was first practicing law, there was another lawyer in the office. I was in my 20s, he was in his mid to late 70s. And I went to him with a question. And he took me into the library and pulled a book off a shelf, turned to a page, and showed me a case that was the answer to the question. Now, for those of you who don't know, to be able to actually just go to a book and find an answer is quite a trick, especially when there's 3,000 books within the library. So I said to him, that's really something. He said, yeah, it is, but that's all I know. Don't become like me. When I'm with my wife, I'm still in this library. When I'm with my children, I'm still in this library. When I'm with my grandchildren, I'm still in this library. If I go to pray, I'm still in this library. My head never leaves this library. Don't become like me. Well, it was good advice, and I didn't become like him, thank God. He was a very, very nice man, but he was limited to his library. We can't limit ourselves to some aspect in this world. We can't allow some aspect of this world to become our expertise. We can't allow some aspect of this world to be the culmination of who we are. We are more than that. We are not sheep. We are lions. And somewhere we have to recognize that we are lions. And we have to stand in front of a lion. We have to stand in front of a mirror. We have to stop being afraid of lions and realize what our heritage is, what our birthright is, and what we are to become. And Allah, in His mercy, has sent examples to us of who we are and who we are to become. And what we are to become is a transcendent, positive, godly being. We need to be able to enter into the qualities that are the qualities of the Creator and incorporate them into our being. And it all begins with being positive. It all begins with looking at the world as if the world was fixed in your favor, as if things were going to go towards you as opposed to against you, that things are coming from a merciful God, a merciful Creator, a compassionate God, a compassionate Creator, and that mercy and compassion is pouring out on your behalf and is being given on your behalf, and that love and kindness are being pushed towards you in your behalf. And when you can assume such an attitude, things will begin to change for you, and circumstances will begin to change for you. Now, what are real circumstances? What is the difference between illusion and between reality? What are important circumstances and what are temporary circumstances? What are the things that we should be moving towards that have lasting impact on our existence, and what has just a temporary impact on our existence? We need to know the difference. Who's better off? A group of dervishes sitting in a circle, lost in the moment, in contemplation of their Lord, or a king sitting in his throne, bedecked in jewels, worrying about his kingdom? Who's better off? Who's in a better place? Who is closer to the truth? Who is mired in illusion and who is transcending into reality? And it all begins with a positive attitude. There's a story about a family who was poor, and they all lived together in a little house. There were three brothers, a sister, and a mother and a father. And because they were poor, they began to become sad. And because of this sadness, they let everything go. They didn't take care of the home. They didn't take care of the inside of the house. They didn't take care of the outside of the house. Everything had sort of fallen into ruin. and they were all satisfied with that state. They were all in a vibratory nature that accepted that state. One day, one of the sons was walking in a market, and he went to buy some food. He had a couple of coins in his pocket. And as he was walking through the market, he noticed a little side street off by itself and walked into a little shop of used merchandise. And he saw this very, very pretty little vase. And he asked the man how much the vase was. And he told him that it was exactly what he had in his pocket. So he gave him the coin, and the man says, "Be careful with it. It's a magic vase. So just be careful." So he took it home, and it's a very beautiful little thing. And he put it on one of the shelves in the main room in the house. The father went by and saw this, and it lifted his spirit. And he thought, well, maybe I should do something about the way the room looks. And he began to paint that room. One of the boys walked by, and he also saw it. And he began to clean the entire house and get all the dust out of the house. Another boy began to wash the windows, which hadn't been cleaned in years. The daughter went outside and began to work on the garden, which had been left in disarray for ages and ages and ages. She planted flower seeds, and soon the house was beginning to look pretty. Everything was in order. The attitude of everybody became different. They began to smile, and the daughter went outside after the flowers had grown and picked a bouquet of flowers and handed them to her mother. And her mother smiled and took the bouquet of flowers and then put them in the magic vase. And it all started with a little bit of light being brought into the house through that little vase. And in the same way, we need to find something to give us that positive attitude, to get us started in a positive way, to bring us towards the light, to bring us towards reality, to get us focused towards the truth. This has to be sustained. This has to become important for us, important enough that we do something daily to reinvigorate ourselves in the understanding that this transcendence, this joining with our Lord, this understanding of who our Lord is, bringing him into our life and making a connection with him is at the forefront of what's important in existence. And unless we understand that that is what is at the forefront of what's important in existence, we are going to slide back into making the illusory world what's most important in our existence and continuing to work to try and fulfill whatever our mind tells us we need in this illusory world. So desire pops up within us. As we walk through life, we constantly have desires. Desires turn into lust. Desire and lust turn into these enormous cravings within the darkness of the mind. And then we pursue that as if it is the most important thing in our existence. We get lost in our desires. We get lost in our lust. We get lost in our cravings. And our worldly cravings through this body become what drive us in our existence. Somehow, we have to learn to control our desire, to control our lust, to control our cravings. We have to cut back on all of the different things that we think we need. You see, whether we need these things or not, thinking makes it so. So if we think we need them, we need them. Whether we do or not has nothing to do with it. Do you really need a $90,000 sports car, or do you just think you need a $90,000 sports car? Well, what's the difference? What's the difference between thinking you need it and actually needing it? You can probably get along with an $18,000 Honda. There was a very wealthy man who used to come to visit Bawa, and he was not from this country. And he was looking to get a car. And Bawa says, "Don't worry, I have a car for you." And he got him an old used Honda. And this man was used to driving around in things much more expensive than old used Hondas, but he got used to driving the old used Honda. And it taught him a tremendous lesson. It taught him that the Honda got him from one place to another when he needed to get from one place to another, in the same way that the $90,000 sports car would get him from one place to another. The utilitarian value of both of them was exactly the same. The only difference was his mental connection to what he was in. We have to understand utilitarian value and mental connections. We have to understand the power and the influence that our mind has on us and how it impacts what we do. And in understanding that, we then have to return to reality. We have to return to truth. We have to bring ourselves into reality and truth. And this isn't always easy, and you can't do it all at once. A man came to the sheikh, and he was a wealthy man and owned lots of properties, owned lots of livestock, and had enormous wealth, and spent all of his time trying to figure out what to do with his wealth and how to control it and how to sustain it and how to maintain it. And the sheikh said to him, in order for you to escape from everything that you have and all the worrying that you're constantly doing, you need to give it away. So he listened, and he directed where everything should go. He had a number of children. He gave each child a certain amount. He made sure his wife had a certain amount. He made sure that his relatives were taken care of. And he very carefully wrote it all down and gave the instructions on what to do, and then went away with the sheikh. So he's with the sheikh for many years now. And at the end of about 12 years, he says to the sheikh, I still don't have freedom. And he says, well, you gave everything away. He said, yes, but now I'm worrying about, did they do what I told them to do with what I gave them? Did everybody get the fair share? Did they keep it, or did they try to take from each other? And the point is that it never ends. There's always a way that you can occupy yourself with worry, no matter what steps you take, until you cut it away and relieve yourself of the attachments. We're all going to go. We're all going to leave. And our hand of influence over things is only so long and only lasts for a certain period of time. It's going to fade. Well, is it going to fade after we die, or can it fade before we die? Can we act as if we're gone while we're still here? Can we be without attachments before we're forced to be without attachments? Can we do that? Can we go to the place where we've left it behind before we're forced to leave it behind? There is a certain nature to how things go. And we are born and we leave, we die. Our attachment to this world gets cut. Our attachment to this world gets severed. It ends. No matter what our intention is, no matter how we think about things, that's what's coming. Now, are we going to hold on to our control over as much as we can control until the last breath? Or are we going to give it up and be able to move into transcendent reality, the reality of qualities, the reality of truth, the reality of justice, the reality of our connection with God? Where is the place that you can go in order to do this? And that place is wherever you are at the moment, that you can sit still and let go of things. You don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to make arrangements for anything. You just have to stop the interaction. You know, when death comes, the interaction stops. We should be cognizant of that fact, and we should be cognizant that we can end it ourselves. Our responsibility stops at a certain point, and others take over. I watch as people hold on and hold on and hold on and hold on, and then poof, whatever was going to happen is going to happen anyway. You can't stop the flow of things. You can't hold back the water by putting your finger into the dam when there's a hole in it. It's all going to crash through. And that's how it is. And once we truly understand that's how it is, that's when we can begin to make the break from our attachment to the world. The prayer that we have to get involved in is a prayer of release. The prayer that we need to get involved in is a prayer of letting go of the world and attaching ourselves to our Creator. This is the only true escape for us. We have to let go of ourselves, let go of our will, let go of our intentions, and substitute His intentions for our intentions. Let His will become our will. Let His way become our way. And His way is a way of love and mercy and compassion and kindness and generosity. And His way is without fear, without any doubt, and without any worry. Unfortunately, our way constantly seems to have doubt and worry and fear involved in it. So, and why is that? Because we're constantly worried that things aren't going to go the way that we want them to go. But if we give up our expectations of how things should be and how we want them to be, and we allow God's plan to go forward, and we accept God's plan, then we have relieved ourselves of worry, fear, and doubt. And when we relieve ourselves of worry, fear, and doubt, we become free. This is what holds us in place. This is what makes our life difficult. For our life to become easy, we have to hand everything over to God, and we have to be able to accept whatever moves forward. Now, this doesn't mean that we become sloths or we spend all day in bed. It means we do the best that we can and we accept what happens, as opposed to being in a constant struggle to make things different or to alter them according to our mind's desire, our mind's lust, our mind's idea of the way things should be. Man can only see perfection when man becomes perfect. Before that state, man cannot see perfection. Man can only see the hallucinations of his own mind, which are not necessarily wise. When we enter into a state of wisdom, we also leave fear. We also leave doubt. We also leave worry, because we know things will be provided for. You know, the Buddhists take their begging bowl out every morning, and every morning they start over with the food they have for the day. They don't have anything stored. They believe that the next day will bring its own sustenance because God provides that sustenance. We have to begin to enter life in that way, without worry, without fear, without doubt, with an absolute belief that Allah will provide for us and that Allah is merciful and kind and compassionate and just and on our side. He created us to be his vice regent. We are his creation. He is closer to us than a mother is to a baby. When your parents abandon you, Allah will not abandon you. So let go of all of that which burdens you. Let go of all of that which makes life difficult, and accept the fact that you are blessed. And you are blessed beyond your comprehension. You are blessed more than you can know. You are blessed in ways that you haven't even thought of or considered. And this blessing continues and continues and will continue as long as we turn our face towards Allah and say, Allah, I am here as your servant to do your will, and I accept whatever it is that you give towards me. This type of attitude towards life brings us to a point of reality, brings us to a point of truth, and then things will begin to open up for us, and we will understand the resonance that is creation. We will understand the truth that is creation and the justice that is creation and the scheme of things as Allah has put them into place, and we'll become satisfied with that. So may all of our hearts be satisfied. May we all be filled with the knowledge that Allah's grace and mercy and protection are with us at all times. Ameen, ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.